Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Burton's Babes. I'm Zoe Burton, in case you didn't already know. Well, you should know, because if you're in my group, then you should know who I am. But anyway, I just wanted to say hello, and if anybody shows up, maybe I'll yak at them. Otherwise, this is going to be really short. So give me a minute to see if anybody comes, but it was in the double digits in the temperature today, so I was kind of excited about that. But now it was like 8 degrees an hour ago, so half hour ago. If somebody's here, I don't know who. It says somebody's watching me, but I don't know who. So anyway, let me get started with my updates. If you're a Kobo reader, if you like Kobo and you buy books from Kobo, I have 3 books in a that they've accepted for a sweet romance promotion starting on February 6th and running through February 11th. And those books are Darcy Overhears, To Save Elizabeth, and Darcy's Surprise Betrothal. Hi, Shirley. Hi, Krista. Good to see you guys. So if you're a Kobo reader, those 3 books are, and I don't remember, I think I had to lower the price. So they're like $2.99 or $3.99 or something. Those 3 books instead of $6.99. My other news is that my Austin Authors Post is Monday, day after tomorrow. Hi, Krista. It's weird how we do that. I do this, and what you guys say comes through like a few seconds after I said it. It's just strange. It's not like real time. It's like there's a delay. Anyway, my Austin Authors Post is Monday, and I don't remember what I wrote about. Newspapers. I wrote about newspapers and compared newspapers in the Regency to newspapers now. I haven't seen anybody else do that. And I thought, oh, there's an idea. My Patreon story. Not a lot got done this week. I have been struggling last week I did great, but I struggled this week, and I'm blaming stress. So I've been pretty stressed, and this happens every time I start getting stressed, and I didn't even realize it. I don't realize it till I'm right in the middle, because I really wanted the book done. So like I had a book finished right at Christmas, and so it always takes me a couple weeks to get into a new book, and so I made a little bit of progress for a couple of weeks, but then last week the third week, I think I had 900 something one week and 900 something the next week, and then I had 2,000 something. Then I had like almost 10,000 words last week, and I think that maybe I got maybe 2,200 this week. I mean, it just wasn't good, but it's stress. And of course, the more stressed I get, the less I write. And the less I write, the less I make, and then it's just a vicious cycle. So it's coming. I didn't write anything today because I'm not blog posts, not nothing, because I have an RWA, a romance writers meeting tomorrow. And so today I was in pre-trip checklist mode. So I've done dishes, like no dish is allowed to be dirtied at this point today. If it wasn't so cold and got dark so early, I would have gone to McDonald's for supper. And if I'd had the steps to the front porch cleaned off, I would have ordered in. But yeah, it is hard to leave the story world behind. And I've always been one, even that summer that I read 40 books. A couple of times, clearly, I read more than one book a day, but I've always been if it takes me 2 days to read a book, and I finish that book in the morning, the second day, I can't read anything else for a day or two. Oh, broadcast interrupted. I don't know. Can you guys see me? I hope you can. I'm still talking anyway. But I've always been one that I don't like to start a second book. I have to absorb, I have to have time to deal with all the excitement from the first book. So, but one summer I did read, in 31 days, I read 40 books. So obviously there was a couple days I read 2 books in a day. Okay, good, 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 good. Awesome. So, but it does take me, it takes me a couple weeks to get into it. And then I don't know. And I often struggle with a new book anyway. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. So that's all my updates I have, because it was just, but anyway, today I was all in pre-trip checklist mode. So, well, I didn't do all the laundry because there's a, the load of towels is just going to stay in the dryer. No, go lay down. Somebody is nudging my thigh. He wants to go out. I'm like, it's too late. When I'm done, I'll take you. I am a fast reader. Yes, I am. I was taught in 3rd grade, I was taught speed reading. And sometimes I have to go, he's whining at me now. No, it's not time yet. You should have gone 10 minutes ago. Yeah, I was taught speed reading in 3rd grade. And sometimes I have to go back because sometimes I'll miss things because I do read fast. So sometimes I have to go back, which was easier with paper books than it is with ebooks. But yeah, well, that year I hadn't read anything for like 7 months, 6, 7 months, because when you're a teacher, you don't really have a whole lot of time during the school year anyway. And I was teaching, and I had just started at the online school. And an online school, at least the one that I taught at, your to-do list is never done. Never. And so I didn't read for like 6 months. And so when I was like, listen, I have 1 month off and I'm going to read. And that's what I did. Some, you know, that's the thing that if I really like it, and you know, that's something too. I never reread a book ever, except maybe like Roots. I reread once or twice. Like Jane Eyre, I think I reread once or twice. But I never reread a book. Like I would read it and it would go on the shelf and I'd never touch it again. Until I found Jaff. And there's some Jaff books that I have read probably 50 times. I've read Pride and Prejudice probably 50 times, or it feels like 50 times. And there are some Jaff books that I have read like 50 times, I swear to you. Imperative, both volumes of Imperative by Linda Wells, and all 3 volumes of Memory by Linda Wells. But the thing with those books is that they take like a week a piece. I have them in print, and they're like this big. Like they're a 5x8 book, regular size book, but they're like this thick, and they take a week. It takes a week to get through like each one. So I don't read them as often as maybe I could, but well, once I was done, you know, then I could read. But then when I found, see, that was when I read those 40 books in 31 days, I hadn't found Jaff yet. It was like, that was July, and it was like September or October that I even discovered Jane Austen. And then it was another month or 2 before I discovered Jaff. So at that point, I read when I was supposed to be working. I'd put off my paperwork until, you know, I'd read, because I found all these websites, all these free stories. And I mean, I was constantly on my phone reading. And I would put I would put my paperwork off and I would read, and then I would end up spending 2 days trying to catch my paperwork up. But I would read between kids instead of doing my paperwork. Yeah, see, I still, and there's even, I still occasionally will buy print books at Walmart. I'll buy like the Harlequin Inspirational, Love Inspired, I think is the line. And I have 3 on my headboard, but I need a battery for my little light. I can't find my pink one, and the purple one that's in there needs a battery. So I can't read those at night. I should just bring them in here. But, and I have a couple in the bathroom downstairs that I'm just kind of, or no, yeah, I think I have 1 in the bathroom and like 2 or 3 on the stand in the dining room. And I just, sometimes I start a story and it didn't, I was never this way until I got into Jaff. But I would start a story and then I can't take, like I get to a certain point and I have to read the end. And sometimes even if I read the end, sometimes I have to read backwards because, and I don't know exactly, I know what happened. I had my heart broken and I just can't, emotionally, I can't take it. I can't take angst. So I have books, regular books that I've started and not been able to finish. Yeah, 10 years, it was 2010 that I discovered Jane Austen. So it's been 8.5 years. It'll be 9 years at the end of the year for me. That's true. Being retired does allow you to, working from home, to be honest with you, allows me to read even more because, you know, when I'm stressed, just like I've done a lot of reading this week, I've read, and it's not Jaff, it's sweet romance, and it's contemporary, but it's cowboys. Well, some of them was cowboys, but they're kind of cowboys, and this other series is kind of cowboys. I mean, they are ranchers, but some of them have other jobs, and you know, but I've read like 4 books this week. Yeah, I have to though. And you know what? Here's a secret about Leanie. Leanie always reads the end of the book before she reads. She doesn't even wait. Like I'll read the first chapter or 2, or I'll even read until I get to the stressful part and then look. But no, Leanie reads the back first. So, and people fuss all the time about that stuff. But you know, and when I was younger, I didn't. But then when I was younger, I read everything. I read newspapers. I read magazines. I read biographies and autobiographies, and I read everything. In my possession, I have a fantasy book. I don't remember the name of it now, and I don't remember the name of it was a whole series, and the boyfriend I had at one point was really into these books, and that actually it was his book. Somehow I ended up with it. And I named my cat after the main female character, but I don't read all that anymore. At some point when I turned my life back over to Christ, my reading habits changed. I have on occasion read more than 1 book at a time, but I don't usually. But there was a period of a few months, a few years ago, where I was reading more than 1 book at a time. Like, I'm going to finish this cowboy book, and I don't know where I went with it, but there's another book around here. It's another professional development book. I think I talked about it before. I meant to start, and then it got hidden, and I'm going to start reading this one. But I also have Bible study books and stuff that I read. So sometimes, I mean, you could say that, yeah, I do technically, but just for escape books, right now I only read 1 at a time. Yeah, fantasy. This had dragons and stuff in it. It wasn't Dungeons and Dragons, and I'd have to go dig it out and look it up. And I didn't see anything wrong with it. I mean, I don't know. I just got kind of picky. You know what? Sometimes I do read a book so I can just cry. There's a story on a Happy Assembly called Being Mrs. Darcy. And that is if I feel like I need that kind of, it's angsty. I mean, it's just actually, I've read it so much now that I'm kind of like, I get aggravated, mainly with Lizzie. But I bawled the first 3-4 times I read that thing. I bawled my way through, and I don't normally read books like that. But then I don't normally like mystery either. And if you get on A Happy Assembly, Lucrezia has all those suspense books, and I hate suspense. Like, I don't watch movies. That's why I read the back, because I don't like suspense. But that's usually, I don't like to cry, but sometimes, yeah. But sometimes some books, I'll tell you what, there's some books that make you cry. They're just good. I mean, if a book can bring, and I guess that's why I go back to Being Mrs. Darcy so often, is it's well written. She just, it's just full of angst. But my feeling is, if a book makes you angry, or it makes you cry, or it makes you laugh, it's a good book, because it brought out emotion. So I don't choose to cry most of the time, but if sometimes I do. But usually when I read, I don't, and I guess that's kind of why I like the Regency Jaff so much. And I know this is probably a reason other people like it, is that I read to escape most of the time. If I'm not doing Bible study or professional development, I'm reading to escape, which is what I did a large part of this week. But yeah, you have to have a happily ever after. Yeah, real life is, and that's why I read a book, and I got really attached to a couple of secondary characters, and the author did not put them together. And I was upset about that. Darcy and Lizzie were together, but the secondary characters belong together. And the author was like, oh, but that's love. And I'm like, that's real life. Yeah. I don't need to read real life. So yeah, I don't. Yeah, it did what she wanted it to do. But she redeemed herself with a sequel. She wrote a sequel a couple years later and redeemed herself. But those books made me cry in spots, those two books, because they were just great. She's a good writer. So, but yeah, I read to escape, and I always have. I always carried a book with me, and now I take my tablet most of the time. But even if ebooks were not cheaper, the older I get, the harder it is to see. And some of my favorite books are in a font it's like size 11, and it's just too small, and I can't see it. And I've always had astigmatism. It's really bad eyes. Even these are like thin lenses, and they're thick. Usually when back before they made these kind of lenses, and you would have a thick lens, and I'm telling you, I had Coke bottle glasses. Victoria Holt. I've read Victoria Holt. Oh, that's cool. And then you married a man named Carr, and her other pen name is Philippa Carr. That is too cool. I know I've read Victoria Holt. I've read James Michener. I've read Victoria Holt. I know I should know which books she wrote, but I don't. But I know I liked her. I know I've read. There was this big, long series back in like the 80s, I think, that was A Wagon Train Going West, and I read every single book. I'm pretty sure I read every single book in that series. I've read Kathleen Woodawit. I don't know how you say her last name, Woodawis or Woodawis or something. I've read her. Wait, I have a list back here, which I can't read because it's too far away. Joanna Lindsay. I read Johanna Lindsay. Fabio. Do you guys remember Fabio? On the romance. I have read some, and I used to have thousands of books. And I had a lot of them were those romances. Trashy romances, and I read them. And Fabio was on the cover, and I recently discovered that Fabio wrote romance novels too. Catherine Coulter is another one that I used to read. But I would, because I read so much, I have always, like I don't even remember books. Like if I see a cover, I'll say, oh, I remember that cover, but I won't necessarily remember the book or what the book was about or anything like that. But I also discovered when I went shopping last month and bought those books that I don't look at the cover except to find out, like I looked at the love inspired books and I just looked to make sure it said love inspired. And then I looked at the back and I read the blurb and I bought these books and I get home and I just opened the first one and I started reading and the turns out the male main character is biracial. And I'm like, wait, it doesn't match the cover. And I cover over and I'll be doggone if he wasn't on the cover. And I was like, whoa. So that just kind of surprised me and I learned from that I don't really look at the covers. I think I really need to, because you don't know what you're getting nowadays as far as what kind of characters and stuff. There's just certain stuff I don't want to read. I don't mind characters being biracial. I don't have a problem with that. There's other characteristics I would rather not read about. So I guess I need to pay attention to covers. You know, and they tell you have to make good covers because people look at the covers. Do you guys look at covers? Like pay attention to the covers, or do you guys look at authors? If you're going to read, well, I don't know, maybe you don't read non-JAF. I don't know. Shirley remembers what it was like when there was only a couple books a year that were on sale of JAF, I'm sure, Shirley. But I think those other ones I don't want to read probably have covers with naked people on them. And so I would probably catch that. Mostly covers, okay. See, I never realized, I mean, I knew that I didn't, you know, that they didn't really make a huge difference to me what the cover looked like. But I didn't realize that I don't look at them at all. So anyway, that was just an observation I made. But, oh, and Julie Garwood. I have Julie Garwood on this list too. Judith McNaught. I don't know why that name sounds familiar, but I just had I got rid of all those books. Yeah, paperbacks. I remember when I started reading JAF, because I read JAF for a couple of years before I started writing it. Maybe 3 years. And my first JAF was paperbacks. Wow, 5 bookcases later. That's awesome. My first e-reader was a Nook, because by the time I found JAF, I realized that Amazon had become like this huge, like kind of a monopoly. And I got an attitude. So I went and bought a Nook first edition. I didn't realize that, you know, they were going to replace it. So I still have that Nook first edition. But what do you look for, Krista, when you're choosing a book? Generally, for me, if I'm choosing a book like out in the world, I'm picky. I'm just so picky. It's ridiculous. I'll look for that love inspired. I'll look for the line, author, cover, and the back page. Okay, yeah, see, that's I don't so much look at the cover and the author, or I didn't used to. Things have changed since I've been reading Jaff, and maybe I looked at covers more back then, but I think I just mainly looked to see if it was the right genre. So if it was a girl in a pretty dress, you know, with her down around her, then I knew it was a romance, a historical romance if she had a gown on. So I just mainly looked at covers, I think, to make sure I was in the right genre. And then I would read the back, the blurb on the back. And I might read like the first couple of pages. And on occasion, before I bought a book, I would read the last page. But usually I think I read the first couple pages and I would read the blurb on the back. And then that was it. But I just have never paid a whole lot of attention to covers. I'm an odd duck. Raise your hand if you're surprised. But anyhow, that's. Oh, see, I had read Gone with the Wind. I've read Gone with the Wind 2 or 3 times. I read that when I was about 15. I didn't read Pride and Prejudice or Persuasion until I was an adult because I didn't like the classics. Like I can't read Wuthering Heights, and I don't like Emma. But I had tried to read some classics, and so when they're like Jane Austen, I'm like, and I skipped it. Oh, see, and this is odd about my parents because they were overprotective. My father was overprotective, and he was very strict about what we wore. He was strict about what we watched on TV, but my reading material was never restricted. And I don't know if I mean, my parents were not great readers. And I don't know if they just didn't know what was in Roots. Surely the book came out before the movie. And I know we saw the made-for-TV movie. I know we watched it, but maybe we watched it after we read the book, after I read the book. But my grandma Moore, who's my mom's mom, had Roots, and she let me borrow it. And then, of course, my father's favorite way of punishing me, well, that's not his favorite way, but one of his ways of punishing me was to take away my books. He said, you're not allowed to read. Yeah, right. So I would have to hide under the covers with a flashlight. And he says now that we knew you were reading. I'm like, prove it. I don't like Emma. I've tried to watch Emma, and I've tried to read it, and I'm not all that fond of Northanger Abbey. I can get to about halfway through Northanger Abbey, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, could anybody be more stupid? So, I spent a lot of money on books too. What is mean? Taking my books away? Yeah, that was mean. But my grandma must have read a lot too, well, no, my Aunt Mary does read quite a bit. But my grandma would have the Reader's Digest condensed versions. You know how Reader's Digest they'd have that magazine, and then they would put all those stories in books. Do you know what I'm talking about? The Reader's Digest condensed versions. And I would go through those. That's where I read Rebecca, was in one of those, I think. Because I read Rebecca when I was a teenager. They were upset because of the difference in what was available between Hamburg, Germany, and Regina. You mean they were readers? Yeah. Yeah. It's strange how different parts of the world and different parts of countries even, there's different materials available to read. I remember when we moved up here, because we moved to this town. We lived 4 or 5 miles south of where I live right now. And I had lived in a bigger place called Niles. It's down by Youngstown and Warren. And, you know, we moved up here. I was in 6th grade. And the first time I went to the bookmobile, They wouldn't let me get out of, I'm like, I automatically go to the adult section because that's where all the good books are. Because I didn't read a lot of kids' books. I read adult stuff. I was in 6th grade and they wouldn't let me take an adult book out of the bookmobile. I had to go find something in the kids section. And I thought, and I didn't really go to the bookmobile much after that. I did not read, I've never read Peyton Place, but I did used to read in school behind my books. And I did the same thing in college. So, oh my gosh, look, it's been a half an hour already. Well, I should probably let you guys go and see if that dog still wants out. It's 8:30, so if I let him out now, I'll have 2 hours before I have to get him to go again. So, anyway, thank you. Oh, you're goody two shoes. And your friends were shocked. Oh my gosh. Well, Peyton Place, I heard, is pretty bad. Anyway, I'm going to let you guys go. So thank you so much for hanging out with me. It was really great. It was fun. I can't believe how fast the time went. Usually I'm like scrambling, trying to find things to say, but talking about reading, that was fun. Imagine that. All right. Thank you, ladies. I'm going to go now, and I'll check back for comments after I get done with it. So thank you for coming. Bye.